Joining us to do that is Jack Rowlett, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Jack, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, let's start with the front page on all the papers, really, the latest developments on that horrific train attack on Saturday in Cambridgeshire. Extraordinary details emerging of acts of bravery. We've already heard about the train driver who had the quick thinking to divert the train onto the slow track so it could stop at Huntingdon. What are we hearing now, specifically about this member of staff on board?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, I think important to say that our thoughts are with the family and friends of those who've been impacted by this awful incident, and we're seeing the stories in the papers this morning of the courage and bravery both of the driver of this train who was able to divert the train to Huntingdon quickly, and also the member of staff who remains in a life-threatening condition in hospital, having attempted to stop the attacker. I mean, it's such an appalling incident, and you never know what you'll actually do if you find yourself in that situation. And I think we all hope we'd be as brave as some of the people on that train were. I think this has been dealt with as effectively as possible by the police and the staff on board that train. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that it could have been so much worse. And I think, I mean, the thing that leaps out at me from this story really is John Healey, the Defence Secretary, refusing to rule out airport-style security being introduced at railway stations. And I think that's such a ridiculous response to this incident. I mean, it's utterly impractical if you think of how long that would take. There's millions of train journeys conducted every day in the UK, and if you're having to go through a sort of metal detector before you could get on the train, that would have such an appalling impact on productivity. And I think sadly this is it's just a tragic incident. It's a one-off. It's not terrorism related, and I think we need to treat it as such.
Yeah, I mean, extraordinary details. Just looking at the Times here, front page, football fans and families were among those on the service. One man is thought to have been wounded as he tried to shield a woman and a young child. Some passengers locked themselves in lavatories while others sought to arm themselves with items left strewn in carriages. And as you say, it's too early for a motive. There's no suggestion that the incident was terrorism. Also, the Times reporting that the man was not known to prevent counter-terrorism officers or the security services. Let's move on to the latest in the Andrew scandal. Yesterday, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, told Times Radio the MOD was working to remove Andrew's rank of Vice Admiral in the Navy. But the latest development is over his medals. So what's happening here, Jack?
Yeah, so this is the news that Andrew could now be stripped of his campaign medals from the Falklands. So this is distinct from those honorary positions that he's already surrendered, as you mentioned. And we're hearing that the Ministry of Defence has now been instructed to look at whether these changes could be made on the advice of the King. I think this is a difficult situation because he didn't get those medals for being a good person generally, right? They're narrowly related to an act of military service. They're not honorary. So I'm not sure I'm in favour of stripping them. I think it sets something of a dangerous precedent to strip military medals won through combat from someone who hasn't actually been convicted of anything. Andrew is clearly an odious man, and he clearly lives for the sort of titles and pomp that he's rightly been stripped of. And I think really the best punishment we can give him now is just to allow him to fade into the sort of irrelevance that he'll so clearly be very, very irritated by.
Yeah, and he was seen as a bit of a war hero in the years following the Falklands for serving as a Navy helicopter. And I wonder whether this would come as almost the worst kind of personal blow.
Yeah, and I think it is. I think it is personal, and I think it would be kind of a sort of punishment for the sake of it rather than because it's warranted. You could strip medals if it turned out that someone had not actually behaved in the honourable way during the conflict that the medals were sort of given for, so to speak. But I think it would be wrong to strip medals from someone when they have behaved in a way that was recognised as brave. And I sort of think the king has now really done enough here.
Mm. Okay, let's move on to Reform UK. We were covering this with Terry as well. Nigel Farage kind of positioning Reform as the party of Alarm Clock Britain, working people, but also having to make something of a U-turn on cutting taxes. And he'll say he'll only be able to do that once the deficit is under control. Do you think this is a good move to sort of regain the initiative early on rather than be accused of a major U-turn closer to an election?
Yeah, I think the economy has been a real drag on Reform's appeal so far, precisely because those tax cuts that they were promising were so unrealistic. Obviously, those big pledges were increasing the tax threshold for income tax from £12,500 to £20,000 a year, and scrapping inheritance tax on estates worth less than £2 million. Overall, that was going to cost 90 billion. It's an enormous amount. It's an amount that the British state clearly can't afford, given the state that we're in. And this is an attempt to sort of solve that Achilles heel, so to speak. But I think Reform are not really serious about the economy. And if you dig down into the detail and look at the areas where they're saying they're going to find those cuts, it's stuff like net zero spending, welfare spending, and sort of vague commitments around the civil service. It's not, for example, the enormous amount that we're spending on pensioner benefits through the triple lock, through the winter fuel allowance. It's not reducing the number of people who go to university. We're seeing lots of people going to courses that don't actually offer any value and costing the state enormous amounts of money. So I don't think that this is a serious attempt to reckon with the spending challenges that Britain is facing. And actually, if you look at the places in local government where Reform won this year, they campaigned on the idea that they were going to have these Doge-style committees. They were going to find loads of spending cuts. And actually, they've come into office in places like Kent, and they've not found any savings. It's all turned out to be a lie. And they're now coming back and putting up council tax. So I think Reform are not a party that can be trusted on the economy, no matter what Nigel Farage says in this speech.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it's not going to resonate with the public and indeed with big business, and they're going to be judged. This will be the first time, effectively, that they'll be judged by what they've achieved in government, rather than previously being able to promise without having the data and the history to back it up. Okay, let's move to the Daily Mail here. A story from Wes Streeting appearing yesterday on the media rounds, where he said 1 in 3 GPs earn more than the Prime Minister. What's he trying to achieve by getting that message across?
Well, he's trying to make the case that GPs already earn a lot of money, and that their rejection of the reforms that he's trying to push through is unacceptable. So he's trying to end this sort of mad 8 a.m. dash that we're all familiar with, where you have to ring up at 8 a.m. and it's very difficult to get an appointment. He's trying to bring in a sort of online booking system to modernize it, and is facing a lot of backlash from the unions because they're claiming that they don't have the money to implement these changes, which I think is somewhat ridiculous. We know that they've got billions of pounds more now than they had under the previous government. We know that that earnings have increased by £37,000 over the last decade. I think it's not right to say that they don't have the resources to implement these changes. I think so often we see GP practices just utterly reluctant to modernise, always coming up with excuses why they can't implement these sorts of policies. The private sector is doing it absolutely fine. If you book a private GP appointment through an online system, it's a perfectly easy experience. And actually, it's not necessarily the case that you can't implement these systems if you don't have capacity. Even if there's only a certain number of appointments, all that's happening here is you're changing the mechanism to book them. So if you're booking them online, they can still run out if you don't have enough capacity. It's just changing it to make it a simpler, easier system, and not having everyone on a sort of outdated phone system at 8 a.m. I think this is reactionary nonsense from GPs, to be quite frank.
Well, the BMA says the Secretary of State displays a deep misunderstanding of how general practice works and how under-resourced it continues to be. The Prime Minister, by the way, earns £175,000. And according to these Department of Health stats, 1 in 6 GP partners earn more than £225,000 in 2023 to 24. Okay, finally, Jack, we know pets have been at the centre of bitter divorce cases. I'm thinking of those 2 poor Yorkshire Terriers, Pistol and Boo, who were caught up in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard battle. Calls now for MPs to update laws around the care of pets, with legal firms wanting to draw up a pet pact, effectively a pet nup. What on earth is going on here?
Yeah, so this is the campaign by Rachel Roche, founder of Roche Legal, who has launched these pet pacts for clients, and they're essentially documents. You draw up an agreement between yourself and your partner, which sets out the arrangements for what will happen to your pet in the event that the relationship breaks down. And there is now a campaign to get MPs to pass laws to get these agreements properly kind of recognised in legislation. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think pets really are a proper member of the family, aren't they? We know the effect that it has when a pet dies, for example. I think it's perfectly reasonable that we should think about what will happen in the event of a relationship breakdown. Not necessarily my priority for parliamentary time right now, but I think it can only be a good thing.
It's the emotional pull, though, isn't it? These poor pets being caught up in legal battles. Well, Jack, thank you very much indeed. That's Jack Rowlett, political commentator with Young Voices UK.